Peace. I'm glad you could tune in. This is Self-Centered Wellness. My name is Alicia Jefferson, and I'll be with you for the next 15-20 minutes or so. I'd like to explore with you the theme, when holding someone up feels like falling down. When holding someone up feels like falling down. So let's get into it. Last evening I watched a show. Some soul singers that were part of my life's soundtrack. Chaka and Stephanie Mills on what's called Verses, where singers, rappers get together and kind of what they battle each other, or just put on a show for the audience. It's called Verses. And last night it was Chaka Khan and Stephanie Mills. Now, they both, like I said, were part of the soundtrack of my upbringing. Chaka started out when I was a baby, before I was a baby, and I can remember Rufus and Chaka Khan albums on our next to our record player with the Four Tops and the Manhattans and the Stylistics and such. So I was raised on these legends. Last night's show, however, Chaka had, a bit of, people say she had been drinking and was drunk. That's what some of the comments said. Nonetheless, on the stage, she seemed to lose her footing, or was losing her footing, kind of stumbled a bit, and Stephanie Mills quickly held her by the waist, got close to her and held her by the waist, and they went to the side a bit, but Stephanie girded her up, by the waist. And I'm watching and I said, "Whoa, Stephanie, better be careful, y'all both gonna fall." And later on, as I'm laying down and such, it started coming to me, led me to think about how we often hold people up and it gets to a point of feeling like we're falling down. Thus, the theme I'd like to explore, when holding someone up feels like falling down. I think about a woman that I work with. Actually, I was working with her son, and she would come in and we discuss some of the things that I've been working with her son on, and she began to share how her husband was an alcoholic, which she felt was the source of a lot of her son's anger. And as she shared with me, unpacked what the home environment was like and things of that sort, I think about now how she was holding her husband up. He was an active alcoholic and pulling on her strength. She made excuses for him when he missed work. She said he was a hard worker. He got up most days, rolled out of bed, went to work, but by the time he came home, she said, as they say, he would be pissy drunk. And she made excuses for him with their family and different things. And I would add, she made excuses to herself to continue holding him up, whatever that might have looked like in their home, dealing with his mood swings and what have you. And there's a lot of us like that who maybe not alcoholics in our lives, but different situations, different people. We hold them up to the point where we feel like we're falling down, or we are falling down in some sort of way, emotionally, mentally, physical strength, spiritual strength. So I encourage you, take time to replenish yourselves. Take time to reinvigorate yourselves. Recharge yourself. Recharge your physical strength, your mental strength, emotional strength. spiritual strength. There are some times when we can't let go, right? We can't let go. This woman, she wasn't at the point of letting her husband go. So when you're in it and you're making a decision to stay in it, you have to, we must find ways, take time to replenish ourselves, refresh ourselves, give to ourselves for a bit of time, whether it's an hour, a day. Take time to replenish. One of my aunts, she spent some of the years of her life holding up my grandfather, her father-in-law. She was doing this for her mother. And often we do things for our loved ones, our parents, and holding up that person, holding up my grandfather, her father-in-law, I'm sure, I was a child, but I'm sure she felt like she was falling down. Possibly feeling like she wasn't doing enough for him. Possibly feeling that there was no support for her. You know, she was doing a lot of it on her own. Not much help from siblings or other family members. And he was sick. And she did a lot holding him up. And I'm sure there were days she felt like she was falling down. And you get there, you have to replenish yourself. Because I think of my aunt, she wasn't letting go. She wasn't going to put him out. She didn't. She made a decision to stick with him. And he eventually passed away, but she didn't put him out. And you may be in a situation or know of a loved one, of a friend who's in that situation. They're not letting go. They're in it. You're in it. We must take time to replenish ourselves, refresh, recharge. When I was a child, I had to go to church almost all the time, it seemed like to me, with my grandmother. And I remember there was what they called revival, right? There would be week-long revivals when the church would host a minister or pastor from a different church. You know, he may, or she may, he for the most part, would speak maybe for a number of days, and maybe another person would speak for another number of days. They would invite other choir singers, other choir members and singers to come in, and the church would be jumping for that week. That it was a revival, that's what it was called, and the church was getting revived, reinvigorated, recharged. And then, you know, that was over, but the church would be reinvigorated, re-energized to continue. And so I think about how you need to have a personal revival. Revive yourself. Find ways to revive yourself emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. Find a practice that works for you. What did you used to like to do years ago when you had time? Did you like to swim? Maybe you can take time, an hour going for a swim. The Y or the nearby gym. Going for a walk. Getting into your car, turning on some music and going for a drive. Crying your eyes out if you need to. Jamming to the music, or just letting your soul and spirit and emotion and mental state be soothed and comforted and replenished, recharged, revived by the music. I think again about Stephanie and Chaka on the stage. There was a point where Chaka sang a few lines from a song, and then she sat down in a chair. She plopped down in the chair like, and Stephanie, as we often do when we're holding someone up, Stephanie in her chair said, "We owed y'all," right? She was making an excuse for Chaka, as we do sometimes, like the woman with the alcoholic husband. In different situations, we may make excuses for the person we're holding up. So Stephanie said, we owed y'all. All right. Find time to replenish yourself. Find ways to replenish yourself. And I bring up Stephanie making an excuse for Chaka, saying, we owed y'all. Stephanie was not out of energy. She offered that excuse for her friend. She was not out of energy. Why I know this? She was, dabbing her face, dabbing the sweat away, but she was still energized because by the end of the show, Stephanie was still up on the stage grooving to one of Chaka's hits, I'm Every Woman. Stephanie was grooving. And here's something else. Stephanie called a friend onto the stage. She said, here's my girlfriend. And her friend got up there and started grooving, singing I'm Every Woman right along with her. And they grooved over to this side of the stage. And Chaka was still kind of in the center of the stage, barely, in tune with her song. But Stephanie, energized, called on a friend. And they invigorated each other and grooved, and her friend was going just as lively as she was. Call on a friend. Take time to replenish yourself, and it might be calling on a friend who always lifted your spirits and you laughed with them, or you can watch a good movie with them. Share some time. Don't go it alone. Think about my aunt. She went it alone. She had help from her daughters a bit, but she carried that weight on her shoulder, holding up her father-in-law to the point it felt like falling down. I worked with a woman some years back whose husband was in his 3rd year of sobriety. He was an alcoholic when they met, and for years, but he was 3 years in his sobriety, and she shared with me, and we worked on some of the things she wanted to work on, but we found that she tiptoed around her husband. She tiptoed around him, worried that something might push him to the bottom. She ran in when she could to help him make decisions. She ran in when she could to try to take away his loads, whether it was issues at work he was having with his supervisor or around the home, different ways. She realized she was tiptoeing around him and trying to do his work for fear that he might be pushed back to the bottom. So with this, I think about how we must trust the resiliency of that person we're holding up. Trust that they have a resiliency in them to make it through. Trust that they have the ability to make decisions for themselves to make it through. If that applies to your situation. Because again, in some situations, that person may not be able to make decisions for themselves. All right. And if at all possible, don't go it alone. If you're caring for a loved one in your home who's sick or unto death, or may have dementia, Alzheimer's, or some sort of life ailment or condition where you can't let it go, so to speak, bring in a support for yourself so that you can have an hour or you can have that day to replenish and recharge and revive and get reinvigorated, so you can get back in strengthened and not worn out and drained and exhausted, falling down. Bring in a friend like Stephanie did on the stage. It could be a friend, or it could be a healthcare worker. They used to call them home health aides. Now they're PCAs, personal care assistants. Bring in some help, maybe a day a week. I shared about my mom on during a different episode, but for the last year or more of my mother's life, she was living with AIDS, and I considered myself her in-home nurse. I was 17, 18, not truly capable of holding her up, but I did what I could. I thought I was holding her up and falling short, and I actually felt as though I was falling, and I was. And when I would leave out of her presence, I'd, make her meals, massage her, help her bathe, clean her up, and different things. Then I would leave, make my great escape. I didn't leave and get replenished. Unfortunately, when I left, I turned to drugs and alcohol. I wasn't getting replenished. I was falling down. And some of you, may be in a situation where you're holding someone up, feeling like falling down. And when you get out of their presence or can get a moment to yourself, you may drink alcohol to unwind or let it all go. You may turn to drugs. I encourage you, find another avenue where you could truly get replenished, reinvigorated, recharged. If you can, maybe to get a nap. Go for a walk. Spend time with a friend. Listen to some music that soothes you, revives you. Take time. If you can't get out of the situation, or let go and let them make the best decision for themselves. Let them call on that resiliency that they have. If your situation is slightly different, find time to replenish, reinvigorate, recharge, reboost yourself so that you're not falling down. Find a healthy way, whether it's exercise, a long bath, a walk with a friend, a walk alone in the park, a run, what have you. If it's going to a movie alone or with a friend. Back to Stephanie and Chaka. So like I say, Stephanie brought a friend out and they grooved on that stage, and it was clear that Stephanie was not tired. Yeah, she had put in some work. She was carrying her load and carrying Chaka's load, singing Chaka's songs. Chaka would pass her the microphone or look at her like, you're going to have to sing this song. And Stephanie stood up and sang the song. She couldn't or didn't decide to stop the show beforehand. I'm sure she saw Chaka's condition before the show. But as they say, the show must go on. The show went on. She made excuses for Chaka. She held her up. And she continued. So that was her decision. And it might be yours with your love and with the person you're holding up. But what was clear, Stephanie wasn't exhausted. The end of that show, she was moving and grooving with her friend that she brought in for support. And she was still jamming. Chaka was like, good night, but good night, she probably said it 20 times. And Stephanie was grooving. Which says, during her practice for the presentation for the show, during the time away from the audience, she's doing something to be energized, to have that energy she gave on that stage. She's doing something to replenish herself, to revive herself, so she's not exhausted and worn out and falling down when it's time to put in the work for the audience. So when it's time for you to put in work for your loved one, you want to have that energy. You don't want to always feel exhausted, always feel drained, and like you're falling down. I encourage you. I give you permission if you so need it. I give you permission. Replenish, revive, rejuvenate, recharge. Walking, bathing, exercise, meditating more, praying more, listening to some good music, socializing with friends or a friend. Whatever your thing is that lifts you. Doing art, going swimming, going for a brisk walk, hiking, going for a drive. Whatever your thing may be. I know someone who does axe throwing. Whatever your thing may be, I encourage you, I give you permission, do it so that you're energized. And I add, if you are in a situation where you can, let go and let them make the decisions. Trust that they can make a decision for themselves. Trust that resiliency will kick in for them. And sometimes we may have to let go and let them make mistakes. Let them fall. Sometimes the mistakes and falling down can become our greatest, lessons. Greatest pushers, So we have to trust that they can do it if you have that situation where you can. I shared about a woman some time back on a different episode who was holding up her daughter, her adult child, and she feared letting go. She feared her daughter making mistakes. She feared her daughter falling flat. And because of that, she felt as if holding her daughter up, she was falling down. The mom explained that she was a saver, a budgeter, and her daughter wasn't. But she was footing the bill for her daughter's lifestyle. And she felt as though she was falling down financially, emotionally, and such. But sometimes our best teachers are the mistakes we make and the times we fall down, because then that resiliency will kick in and we make a better decision for ourselves. I encourage you, I give you permission, replenish yourself, rejuvenate yourself, revive yourself, reinvigorate yourself, have a personal revival so that you can dance and groove through your life, even when you're holding up a loved one. Trust, if you're in a situation, trust their resiliency. Trust their ability to make a decision for themselves. If you're in a different situation, definitely revive, replenish, rejuvenate so that you can get in there and dance to it like Stephanie Mills did while she was on that stage with Chaka, holding her up. There came a point when, like I say, Stephanie was over here with her friend dancing and grooving, and Chaka was in the center, and Stephanie, she didn't totally let her go. Stephanie was over here saying, Chaka, Chaka, Chaka Khan, Chaka Khan. She was still supporting her from a distance. She was rallying her on from a distance. She had held her up, girded her up around the waist, held her hand, sang her songs. Then she was over here grooving in tune with her friend, but she was screaming out Chaka's name, Chaka Khan. One of her songs, goes Chaka Khan, and she was doing that, supporting her from a distance. Sometimes we have to do that. I like to pause, take a few deep breaths. Just 3. When holding someone up feels like falling down, get replenished, recharged, revived, reinvigorated. I like to end as I began. Peace. I'm glad you could have tuned in. This is Self-Centered Wellness. My name is Alicia. Until next time.